Hi everyone, this is Sandy, like the beach, and today I'm doing a video for you that I hope you'll enjoy, and I hope that some people may resonate with it and others may just find it interesting. So this is my first time on camera, so forgive me if I'm a little, if you can't hear me, I will speak loud, and excuse my fans. It's a little warm in here because I live in an RV. So if you can hear me, then I'm thankful that you're here and you're joining me today. And I enjoy talking about what I'm about to share with you today. I have been on a long journey. I just want to add today also, for this video purpose, it's just for informational purposes, and it also is 100% true to my experience, you could say. If you've noticed some of the videos that I've done some drawings, I've done some spiritual pictures of Jesus in my drawings, and just so you can kind of understand, today that's what I'm going to lead into is about this story, is my spiritual journey, and hopefully it will maybe help someone else along the way, and I pray it does for anyone who has struggles in the same experience. Okay, so let me start by thing as a child, as a small child, I experienced things that I don't believe were normal for everyone. Just as a long journey it's been, I would say around 30-year journey at this point, of just trying to research or find answers to those experiences that I was having. Years ago, and I would say probably around in the 80s, I started having experiences more often. As a child, I had experiences in dreams, knowing things that were maybe going to happen, but never really sharing those things. Some of those things that I experienced, I had a lot of dreams that were bad dreams, a lot of nightmares, night terrors, used from research, I believe it was sleep paralysis, where you feel as though you're awake but you cannot move. So that's one of the things as a young girl that I experienced. But getting older and up into, I would say, my teens and my 20s, early 20s, things started getting a little different. Things started being not just about the dreams. It was more or less like the experiences of maybe deja vus, a lot of deja vus, knowing that I've maybe been somewhere before, even though I may have just been somewhere for the first time. A lot of things happening, like in the journey of that. Also hearing things or maybe seeing things that may have not always been relevant or visible to others. But I always made some sort of an excuse or reason why I was experiencing that, or maybe I really wasn't seeing what I thought I was seeing, or maybe I just really didn't hear, or did I? I'd always questioned, and I never really had given it much second thought to it. So I started noticing a little bit around early 90s, getting in things, television shows, psychic detectives, or I would watch all of these things because I was more concerned about the dead than I was the living. And so I watched everything that I could watch, or try to learn everything that I could learn from television, books, people, experiences, or going to places that were known to be spiritual activity, spirits, highly active places that I knew where I could test this out a little and see if I'm actually feeling what I'm feeling, or hearing, or seeing, or whatever may come up. So, notably, one particular show that I mentioned was The Psychic Detectives, and this was years ago. And I think there is still some of these videos on YouTube. You can watch the videos, research them. It was a television show, and it was, to me, it was just mind-blowing. So I started out, in one particular episode, one of the women who was helping solve one of the crimes was explaining how she was getting her information and how she would pick up energies, and noticing when she spoke about the ways that the information would come to her, everything I had a check mark for me. It was like the same exact experience and exactly how I felt in my own experiences, that I could just relate to somebody, and finally, like, this light bulb went off in my head that maybe what's happening to me is really something that is real. I mean, I always thought it was something that was maybe a mental issue. I sound, to be honest with you, because the first thing you do when you start hearing things or seeing things that can't be reality or doesn't make logical sense, you start questioning your own mental status. And that was where I was starting to experience a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. A lot of things were starting to come in because I was feeling this really self-inverted sort of illness, I guess you could say, because I was thinking that there was something mentally wrong with me. So going forward, after I saw that show, then it just started as a whirlwind of me just researching everything that I could find. I mean, it was phenomenal how I was just obsessed, but that's just part of my natural character, I guess you could say, or personality. It's being obsessive compulsive in anything I do. So I have that, and I was just fascinated with the whole thing. Anybody who would do readings live on television, card readings, if I could find metaphysical stores who, in my local area, I would, just be fascinated with those, with the whole spiritual realm. And I was just living for knowing more about the dead, if you want to get real about that. And that's exactly where it led me to. Was a lot of things happened throughout the years. I had bought a home. I worked a job for 13 years, bought a home in Florida. I went through the happy times, and then all of a sudden I went through some really bad times. I lost my home through bankruptcy, lost friends and family members that passed on. So depression, anxiety, things like that started building after a lot of that. I moved and split up, from my ex and I, so that kind of led to a little bit more on top of the depression and the anxieties. But things were starting to come in a little clearer for me of understanding what was happening to me. I went through a lot of suffering through homelessness for a while. Well, I lived in my van, so technically I was not homeless, but struggling with issues, a lot of issues. Struggling with trying to deal with what what I was dealing with all of the anxiety and depression and things like that were just kind of snowballing into, and the deaths of family members were snowballing into this really, really bad place that I ended up being. So I took, a few years ago, and I decided that, I wanted to not be here anymore. This was something that I knew that I just couldn't handle. Things got bad and worse. I couldn't keep a job. I job top. I couldn't even pay people I owed money to. I couldn't do any of those things. So I started getting really in a bad headspace, and I knew I didn't want to be here any longer. It had happened to me, and the things that I was experiencing with hearing and seeing experience. And I have to say that all of the research that I did, I never realized at any point in time it would lead me to this. But I had an experience, a religious experience. I decided I was done. I didn't want to be here anymore, so I picked up the Bible. I never realized that I could have any answers for what was happening to me, but I thought, because I'm feeling so bad and I'm feeling this depression, that maybe, there's a reason, that I could find to want to desire to live this life. And it was harsh, but I knew I had to find something, just that small little spark of wanting to know if leaving this place was the right thing. So I started reading. I started out just flipping through the book, and I didn't go in any particular order, and I had experienced a lot of, and maybe a lot of people do this, but not really understanding a lot of the Bible. And that journey was a whole different journey. But I learned on my own. I pursued this book that I thought maybe there could be an answer in here. So I went along in the book, and it started getting to the point where I had a vision. And this was soon after I picked up the book. It couldn't have been not even, a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks tops out of the book. I had a vision. I was sitting in my car, and I was crying. I was very depressed, and I had this vision of this man walking towards me. And I'm perfectly awake. I'm sitting in my driver's seat of my vehicle, and I'm perfectly awake. But I have my eyes closed, but I could see him walking towards me. And I could see that he was wearing like a robe or some sort of long garment looking clothing. And I thought, oh, that's kind of like strange, because I could see, prior to that, sometimes I would have these experiences. Every once in a while, these things would pop like into my vision, and I could be wide awake, but just with my eyes closed, I could see things moving like a film, like somebody's playing a movie, and I'm looking at a movie, but it's like with my eyes closed. So as I see him walking to me, I thought, oh, I must be having one of these movie experiences again. But this was not that. This was different. So as he gets closer to me and closer to me, I recognized him. And I recognized that I'm seeing God. So of course I'm already weeping, but I start, as in speaking to me, he just put thoughts into my head. I could hear him in my head speak words. And he just said that you are loved, child. And I just completely just broke down, as in from a deep place of just crying out, like so hard, just figuring that someone cared, like, to me. And I'm thinking, someone cares? Wait a minute. I'm like, this is God. God cares. So I thought, after I got done weeping, he just kind of like faded out. And after I got done fully weeping and trying to get my composure, I realized that I had really experienced that. And I thought, well, there's my answer. Like, there's hope somewhere in that. And while I'm learning about the Bible as well. So going into 2 years now that I have read this Bible from front to back, and I still go back to read parts of it that I do not understand. There's something in this that I've experienced many times. I've heard God's voice speak to me, clear as day, an audible voice. I've had visions of Him showing me things, of Him showing me Him sitting in His throne. It's really interesting, and it's hard to explain without trying to get choked up. So it was the answers that I was looking for my whole entire life, and never realized it, and never really opened up my mind or my eyes until this year. This particular incident happened to me, and this situation was so unexpected. But I have been having dreams that are heightened. I've been having visions. My hearing, spiritual hearing, has been heightened. But this particular day was interesting. I was actually on a job, starting a first day on a job. I was in an orientation room, which was just a plain room with a white wall. And the job was requiring, it was a warehouse job. It was going to be really, like interestingly hot and crazy, because it gets hot here in Texas. And there's no climate control. And she was standing across the room in this little, just a little room of white walls and fluorescent lighting and, a drop-down screen. And she's explaining to me and one other girl, and that's a new employee starting out, how we're going to, come into the company and what the company's all about. So we're like, okay, no problem. So she gives us both our little packets in front of us, to where, we're going to have to sign these documents once she's finished doing the presentation. So we get into the presentation, and the more I'm looking at her standing across the little tables that we're sitting at, and she's across the other side of the room, I start looking at her a little bit longer than looking at the drop-down screen, projector screen, because I noticed that she started having a white glow around her. And so I thought, wow, I'm thinking to myself, that's really weird. The lighting in here is really kind of strong. The fluorescent lighting must be really, like, the bulbs must be really, bright. So as she's standing there, the more I noticed the white light around her, the more I kept looking at the screen, maybe to adjust my eyes, look down at my little packet of paperwork. I looked away maybe at the other girl, just trying to refocus, So I looked again at her, and now the white light is getting brighter, and it's starting to expand, and it was encompassing her whole entire body from what I could see. Now she's standing behind a table, so from the waist up, I could see her this white light all around her, particularly around the head and the shoulders. So as I'm looking at her, it's just getting so much brighter, and it starts widening and expanding out. So now I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So I'm still trying to focus. And I noticed that behind her ear, I could see a bit of a flicker of something kind of dark, or outlined in a dark black outline in this white glow. Then all of a sudden, the white glow expands wider, and now on the inside, lining her shoulders and her head, is this beautiful teal green color. And that's encompassing all around her body on the inside as the white light expands. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. I'm seeing her aura. And I thought, wow, that's just amazing. That's like the first time I've ever seen it, because I actually watched a video on that probably a couple of years back about how you can actually see people's aura, and up against a white background, white backing, and if you actually stare at the between the eyes or the bridge of the nose, and you can teach yourself how to focus on that, and then you're able to, with your peripheral, see the outline of people's auras. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, oh, I must have practiced enough to where I could see it. And I'm thinking, that was like years ago. Like, how can I do that like right now? So I thought, well, I dismissed it, and I just enjoyed just sitting there enjoying. Well, I'm still looking at her, and I'm still seeing a flicker of a dark outline behind her. And I thought, well, that's really weird. Then all of a sudden, the white light expands and expands out to her right side. So now it's just off the right side, and all of a sudden, inside the white light, there's a black outline of a man from the waist up, similar to how I'm seeing her, and he pops out and he's leaning to the side, and he says, or he doesn't say anything, but the thoughts that are being put into my head, just like when I experienced with God, the same thing. And he's just like, hi, look at me. And I thought, I am looking at you. So I'm like, this has gotten really strange, needless to say. So as I'm looking at him, he's just putting these thoughts. He's like, I'm okay. I'm happy. I'm young again. And he's telling me these things. And I'm thinking, well, this is a wonderful thing, because now I'm experiencing a full, complete apparition of a spirit, is all I can say. And I can describe him, but better than that, I can show you, because I drew a picture of him and the girl. And you'll have to excuse my drawing, because it's not the best artistic work that you've ever seen. But technically, when I first seen him, I'm going to show you what I saw as his age when I first seen him. So this gentleman, because the girl that was there, she is a Hispanic girl, and this gentleman here was of Hispanic descent. And so this is him that I saw, because he had these really big cheeks and this huge smile. He had these very dark eyebrows and these very dark eyes, and just the very sweetest and kindest and friendliest demeanor of anyone that I've met. And it was actually very enlightening and very heartwarming when I saw saw him. So in this form is how he presented himself initially in the beginning. So as I'm sitting there, and she's standing talking, continuing to talk about the company, and I'm still looking at the spirit next to her. So now he changes to a younger age, and because when he's putting the thoughts into my head, he's saying I'm younger. So now here is the actual photo that I drew of her standing and talking, and here is how he looked to me. And the way he looked to me, he was taller than her, and he, like I said, he popped out like on the side of her. And this is how I saw her, and this is how I saw him, because there was a table like in between. So this is the age where he said that he was young again. And so when I said to him, in my mind, of course, I'm not speaking, I said to him, how old? Because he was happy at this age. And this age, he was like 24, is what he said. So that number popped into my head, and I'm assuming that's what age he was here. And he enjoyed that age. So what's interesting about this, because I explained to the lady, the HR lady, I talked to her about him, and I said to her, I just need to let you know, because once she came over and she was completed with the interview, I'm sorry, not the interview, but when she was completing the orientation, she said that we needed to sign papers, and she was going to go to her computer and enter us into the system. So she comes back and she says, sign this, do this, and all. And this is when I explained to her what I saw, and I said, I saw a young man, or I said, I saw a man that was standing beside you. Of course, I didn't explain to her everything of how I saw this man appear, but I explained to her, and I said, I just wanted to know, and she was like, oh, you're freaking me out. I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, don't freak out. I said, just know that it wasn't anything bad. I said, it was actually very good. I said, this was nothing negative. I said, this is a very kind man. He was very happy. So I said, did you happen to have a father or a grandfather or someone pass recently? And she said, well, my dad's been gone for years, and my grandfather's been gone, like she said, I really never knew him. But she did say, I just lost my uncle to COVID last year, because this happened in July 12th of 2021. So her uncle passed away from COVID, which was very disheartening, and I told her I was very sorry to hear that. I said, but this gentleman I can describe to you could possibly be him, and I described his features, about the very, very chubby cheeks and the huge smile. I explained to her how he showed me his age when he passed, apparently, and then at a younger age. And she was just saying, that sounds like him. And I told her that he was happy. He was 24 again. He was able to be 24 years old again. I said he's at peace. I said he's a jokester, and she said that is him exactly. So I never knew that something like this could ever happen to me, but I'm really thrilled that it did. I just know that it's a validation for me, but those are gifts, and now I understand completely, because God says in the Bible, I will open up your spiritual hearing and your spiritual gifts. So we all have the ability, if we just seek Him and pursue Him, and radically go after him. So this is something that I hope that will help everyone who may be experiencing these things. And just to cut the video a little bit short, I've kind of rambled on long enough here. There's a lot of things that can come after this video. I will definitely keep, you know,